All right, it's 5:30, so I'm going to call the meeting to order. Are we being recorded?
We are.
Were we recorded earlier? Anything prior to this will be raised except if we need to use it. Just kidding. All right. I'm going to call the meeting to order right now. It is 5:30. This is September 18th, the Minnetrista work session. Present this evening, myself, Mayor Lisa Whalen. Council members present are Kathleen Refkin, Ann McGregor, and Claudia Lacey. Peter Vickery is absent this evening. And then we have Director of Public Works is Gary Peters. Peter. And then
It's called worse.
Angie Bowl is with us, sitting in as our city clerk. And then Jasper Krugel, and then city administrator, finance director, Brian Grimm, and Sarah Sensala with Kennedy and Graven, our attorney this evening. Thank you all for being here. And with that, we're going to start out with our water fund discussion. I think, Brian, you're going to start out right away.
Council, so hopefully the information in the packet, or especially the memo, tried to hit the highlights as far as what things are looking like for the water fund for 2024 for the draft budget. As noted in the packet, Gary and A2S, they did a good job of putting together an updated infrastructure plan. So we think we have a better idea of when those wells and the water treatment plant should be being constructed, or capital project items. So obviously if things change or slide over, move over the upcoming months, we'll update that. And then as far as the utility rate study, I think was very helpful last year in 2022. So I updated that for the purposes of this meeting for the water fund projections. So you saw that, would have seen that attached in the packet. Went ahead and updated the projected rates, and obviously, those can change in the out years, or they can be modified as revenue amounts coming in budget to actual analysis is done. The water fund debt was, obviously there's going to be some debt coming on at some point in the not too distant future for first the wells and then the water treatment plants. So we have to plan for that, and we know we'll be adding annual debt service to our water fund. Made the note that the current cash balance in the water fund is about $2.3 million, but of that, there's about $900,000 million left to pay on the Morning View project for the water main. We've paid about half of the project so far. I mean, I know they're past that as far as completion or whatever. So, as of now, I guess there's a preliminary to look at basically about 8% rate adjustment for 2024, based on some of the operations and capital and debt that's within the water fund. I don't know if anyone has any questions on the documents included in the packet, or wants to. Maybe I just want to open it up for discussion as far as the thoughts on the water fund, or at least we'll know more information in the third quarter once we get that revenue in, so we'll be able to give an.
Hold on, just a second.
Oh.
Hold on.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
We're trying to get this mouse to work.
That's okay. Okay, hers isn't working either, and hers is working with mine.
Oh gosh, not again.
Yep. But mine didn't work with hers.
Okay. Do we have any other mouses?
Sliding in here.
We have a plug-in mouse. Try this one.
Thank you. I'll take your mouse.
Sorry.
Oh no, that's okay.
I
definitely want everyone to be able to follow along.
Yeah. You're not
You
working.
get to use Claudia's.
Claudia's, is yours working?
Oh, well, we'll see now.
Oh, Claudia's mouse is working on Anne's.
Claudia's mouse is working on mine.
Okay.
Oh.
So,
Yeah, I can use it. Thank you. Perfect.
so now
All
you
good.
have Claudia's. Sorry, Brian.
Oh no, that's okay.
Okay, so your mouse is working
Well, my mouse is not working, but this new one is working.
Okay, that's
Everybody has
fine.
working mouse.
At least for now, we have working
tonight, right?
mouses.
Nice
Okay.
thought. Yep,
All
we're all
right.
set.
Working mice.
Should
All
I-
right, there you go.
Should I go back to anything, or
I,
or does council want to jump in with any questions or comments?
yeah, let's do questions
Okay.
first.
I've got one.
Go ahead.
So on the capital improvement program, we have 10 million allocated for the third water treatment plant. Are those numbers accurate based on what we got earlier from AE2S, where the project was closer to 18?
Yes, or so, and I don't know if Gary wants to jump in too, but we did contact AE2S and get updated dollar amounts as well as updated timeline, and that 10 million, was at least a good number from my perspective, as long as that's a good,
Yeah, that's what they had
good
said.
relevant
Put that
number,
in
good, or,
and split it between the 2 years.
yep.
Does that include engineering costs as well?
I believe so. I believe that covers
Okay.
everything.
So,
Not
If
the
it-
wells are separate, so
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, if I may, the wells are separate. The total project cost that like what we submitted for the bonding request was 18.5. That included the wells. That included also the infrastructure to tie everything together. So that's the total project cost for basically 3 projects.
So then is this a reflected budget for the total cost that we will need to spend for the infrastructure, the wells, and the treatment? So I'm assuming the infrastructure comes out of the water fund?
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure these numbers are right based on that, because we submitted the bond for 18.5, and this is nowhere near meeting 18.5.
Well, my understanding was that estimate was a little inflated or high just to start.
Just
I mean,
Right.
to have
Yeah,
a
'cause-
number, but
Yeah, so I think even with tying it together, I mean, I guess we can clarify if we have to add $1 million or $2 million for water main or whatever, but I know from previous projects, the water main shouldn't make it go from, I mean, I know the wells are like $1.5 million and the water treatment's, 10, so that's 11.5.
are both wells, the 2 wells, 1.5 together?
That's the way I understand it.
Because I know
Gary.
initially they were saying, 1 point, and that's one of the things I was going to ask, because I've heard and I've talked with other mayors from other communities that are drilling wells, and they thought $1 million per well was a bit high. They're
I think
doing
so,
wells
too.
at around 500,000 to 600,000.
Yeah, that's been our experience in
Okay.
the past. It's like
Yeah.
$750 per well should be plenty. I mean, I think.
and I think they're planning just a little extra, just
Yeah.
with
Just
what.
a little buffer in case.
Yep, and if
Okay.
we need a third well, so we're
Yeah.
talking, we may end up needing a third well. So
So yeah.
So that was my other. Well, that's a AE2S question. Is that third well? Why don't we just drill deeper into the Jordan or the Tunnel City Wanawak?
That was my question.
Oh, sorry.
Very good.
and get more gallons per minute.
Why not?
well, that is being discussed to see what we can do with that. We may not need that third well at all. I mean, the 2 primaries will be the Jordan.
Right.
The secondary will be the Mount Simon. If we would need a second one, I did bring that up already too. Why wouldn't we not space smart enough where we can, drill into the Jordan again? But to get that accurate space, we may end up having to talk to Three Rivers again and getting some area in there to get them spaced apart enough, and then to make sure with the hydrology of it that we're not,
Yeah, but what I'm saying, Gary, is rather than doing 3 wells, why not just do 2 wells now and dig the Jordan deeper?
well,
So
mean, just
a deeper well doesn't necessarily mean more GPM.
I thought it meant more pressure.
No.
no.
pressure comes from the tower. The tower
Yeah.
gives you water pressure.
So
No, wells. Okay.
yeah. So what we're trying to do with a third well potentially is meet a future demand for water to kind of get up to 2,500 gallons per minute. What they have allocated for the Mount Simon is kind of limited to what we
Right.
have in
The
current well
600.
for. The Jordan is, I think, a conservative estimate. I think we can probably get more than what we have allocated, but we just don't know. A lot of times when they develop, it's a wild card.
Okay.
But just going deeper into the Jordan, it's like a lens of, I don't know if it's 100 feet or something like that.
Once you're in it, you're in it.
You're in it,
I mean,
yeah,
it doesn't
so-
matter how deep. I mean, you don't want to go too deep into it. I mean, it's just all you're doing is submerging deeper. So.
Okay.
So the third Tunnel City Wanawak would be to supplement any future development. You could choose to do that with the whole project right now, or as that treatment plant phases up and maybe expands, you could put in another well. What Gary's saying is maybe, the Jordan's looking pretty dang good. Why don't we just try to find a Jordan well somewhere else that won't interfere with this Jordan well?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
To
Yeah,
help
in the same
out.
aquifer,
In the
but
same
just spaced
aquifer.
enough far enough apart.
Which is also an option.
But
And-
either way, like we need a third well.
If we need a third one, yes. So, and just to go back to answer your other question here, and this is what Aaron Vollmer from A2S had sent us. They kind of looked at what the Robbinsdale did the same thing, 2 pitless wells, but this is 2020. There were 400,000 plus 100. The pumps for each were $100,000, and then 50,000 for all the electrical miscellaneous. It's around 550. So what he's recommending, he says with inflation of the last 3 years, he would say conservatively 700,000 per well is probably a good estimate. Excuse me. And then for the same thing for the water treatment plant, he said ballparking a 2,000 gallon per minute plant. Ramsey did a 7,000 gallon per minute plant, came in at 32 million. So he just scaled it down. Looking at that, he said probably around 10 million. He said that we can fine tune the cost as we get through that water treatment plant study. But he said it's a pretty decent start. And that's where he comes up with the numbers.
Yeah, so it's probably going to be closer to 12 to 13 million.
Yeah, it all kind of depends on what we find.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
and then that does include transmission lines and stuff too. So.
Right, yeah. So I guess to Kathleen's point, or even then, if you say these numbers are correct, then do we really need to raise it as much as we're predicting over the next several years? Because we were originally, when David Drown did this, weren't they thinking 18 million projects of 18
but
million?
I've updated that to come down to the modified A2S estimate. So, because David Drown even thought we were, going to have to do like 14% like earlier and stuff. So the 8% and stuff takes into account that now we're going to spend 12, 13 million in infrastructure versus 18 million.
Okay.
Yep.
And then on the next page there, can you explain the depreciation? Why it just stays at the 931,599?
I mean, it's more of a non-cash item anyway. I mean, it probably will once we have the plans online. It will be something higher, but this was more to just try to project out cash flow and stuff. So, but yeah, that depreciation, once we get some of that, especially once we get the new water treatment plants, you can probably even see how it jumped over the years from back to 2015. That once you get something, $10 million over 20, 25 years or whatever, that will bump up. But it gets, for the purposes of the illustration, it gets backed out as far as a non-cash item. So that'll be updated as we go. But no, good question. I thought about putting in, I could have put in 5% a year, but really it's going to be pretty similar, and then it's going to bump up once we get the treatment plants built or whatever.
So I don't know if this is a good time to put this in, but so here's something else I found out recently. Corcoran got $10 million for their water infrastructure projects. And Corcoran is a fast-growing community, probably very similar to Minnetrista, except they're growing even faster than we are. So I'm just throwing this out there again. I know last time we briefly talked about the lobbyist and stuff, and we said, well, at some point we will have to, but right now maybe not. So I'm just asking, do we want to reconsider that? Because, I'm thinking Mound got $6 million, they got $10 million. Why aren't we getting any money?
We didn't request it in time last year.
I know, but I'm just saying, even if we requested it, I don't know that that's going to get us anything, but do we want to reconsider that? I'm just asking.
And what was the cost of the lobbyist? 42,000.
Around 40,000 a year, yeah.
I'm assuming Mountain didn't use one.
Probably not.
Corcoran used one?
I don't know.
Do we
So
need?
Mound did not. It was kind of driven by Representative Myers. Corcoran, unclear. I know that their representative, I can't remember the name. Limmer also kind of sponsored that bill.
Right.
I'm not. It's unclear if there was a lobbyist involved.
I don't
I know that the Lockridge list that they gave us didn't have Corcoran in it.
Okay.
So it could have been another lobbyist group, but not Lockridge.
Okay.
So the lady that was here, as far as potential lobbyists, made a comment about Minnetrista and the perception of Minnetrista. So maybe the perception of Corcoran is different.
It could be. Yeah, I don't know. And see, I don't know I'm not being in St. Paul. I don't know so Limmer was there. Is there a rep? There a senator, and I don't know how much experience he has. I don't know what committees he's on. what pull he has, I don't know that.
I feel like he's been in the Senate. Or
He's
in
been
the
there a
quite
while,
so yeah.
but I think he was a representative, and now I think he's a senator.
Well,
That's-
Morrison supports the bill as well.
Right.
And she
Right.
she was a representative, and now she's a senator.
And she actually, when I talked to her earlier this year before the end of the Senate, asking her to support the bill, she actually said, I would highly recommend getting a lobbyist. I'm not sure why. We could ask her again. I'm just asking if it's something we might want to consider. If we don't, that's fine. I'm just throwing it
I
out
think
there.
we do, but not for next year, but for 2025. Again,
Because
I
we
don't
can
add
read- if
anything
it's
more to
not-
this tax bill.
If it's already been submitted. If it doesn't get picked up next year on the bonding bill, we can submit it again in 2025. Correct?
Correct.
With a lobbyist behind it, in theory.
Potentially, yeah. So right now, the request that we have in is through the Minnesota Management and Budget. They facilitate the requests. It's in their system. That essentially goes to the governor. They look at it. It could be on the governor's list. The problem with 2024, we don't know. The bonding bill
We don't know
potentially
if
could be
they're gonna
pretty
do a
small.
bonding bill.
It's an election year too, and bonding bill requires supermajority. So there's a couple things working against us compared to last year, which not an election year, huge
Probably we
surplus.
should have done a lobbyist last year.
So it's tough to say the outcome of it, And I just did some quick Googling, and Corcoran did not have a lobbyist. It was the mayor and I think some city officials that worked with Limmer to get the bill
Yeah,
drafted.
right.
Kind of similar to us with
Right.
Morrison also had a companion bill in the Senate too
Right.
that
Okay.
went along with Meyer's bill in the House.
Okay.
I mean, so we can plan. If it doesn't go this year, we can reevaluate using a lobbyist for the following year, but still plan on, I guess, paying for it ourselves.
How does that work? Let's just say, because we're going to have to move forward with the wells and with the treatment plant.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, it looks like the treatment plant would be built late 24, 24,
25, 26
So
would be
25,
construction,
mid
probably.
25, probably completed in 26, right? So if
Then we're in pink towel.
yeah, right. I know. I saw that. So here's my question: if we've already started the project and or even completed the project, because we wouldn't be asking for money until the bonding of 2025, right? So we wouldn't know until May or June of 2025. Could we get is it likely we would get reimbursed?
Yeah, unclear. I don't know. I've never heard of that,
Okay.
but
Do you know, Sarah? Any idea?
I guess I've never heard of that either.
Okay.
It seems like it's always an upcoming project.
Well, then the only other option we would have is, if we do it in 2024, that we keep an eye on what's happening in St. Paul. And if they do a special session with bonding this fall, I don't know if they decided that or not, but if they do, we need to keep an eye on that and be on top of it. And then if they do bonding in 24, again, we're going to have to then decide what to do. I mean,
well, we're definitely going to be evaluated for 2024 because there will be a bonding bill. It's just small compared to the 2023 one. I think there's probably going to be a lot of requests that didn't, get met in 23 that are on the list. So I think it'll be highly competitive in
Yeah.
24. And the wild card is it requires a supermajority, and it's an election year. So.
Because for 2025, we'd probably be in the municipal bonding process and have funds in by early to middle of 25 for the water treatment plant. I mean, it'd be close as far as knowing, but until you really know for sure, you wouldn't want to be hanging out there with a couple $1 million of bills you can't pay, right?
yeah, right. Well, that's just it. All right. Okay. Well, we'll keep an eye on it and see. Yeah.
Otherwise, yeah. Does anyone else have any? Does that 8% seem reasonable to start, and then maybe we'll know more on our third quarter revenue here in a few
Yeah, the
weeks.
timing's a little weird. We should have had this in October after we get quarter three's revenue in.
Right.
Just-
Yeah, well, and we'll, I guess the plan was to have an original discussion and then maybe do the follow up or whatever, once we know. But if people actually conserved, and it's all going to depend if we get 500,000-600,000 in third quarter, if it's 500,000 or whatever, if it's more normal, or if it's
What was it last year?
Last year was like
Last year was
800,000-900,000. It shouldn't be
Yeah,
that high.
it was almost 900. Yeah. Okay.
So, I just wanted to see the water fund's a bigger fund. Just wanted to at least get some, and even give some updates on some of these infrastructure projects and the timing of, and even get feedback as far as whether it's better to do like 10% the next 5 years, or let it be a little lower now and let it ramp up as people can see tangible infrastructure building, or just wanted to at least get some of that initial input, and then whether like people are good with the 8%, knowing we can maybe bring it down to we did 6% for this last year. If the revenue comes in pretty good, maybe we go to 5 or 6 for 2024. But
we don't even know what these projects. We don't know for sure what the projects are going to cost as
Anyway,
well. I hate to ramp it up and then so high, and then also then later on go, oh well, we didn't need this much. So
that's why,
Yeah.
to me it makes more sense to almost, once the projects we know bid costs, and that then you can ramp it up a little more. I think people are probably more willing. They're never really super happy about paying 14 or 15%, but if they see something being built, they're
Right.
probably a little more understanding. So
Yeah, I don't have a problem with 8%. That's fine. Like to see what we make quarter three and based
bring it
on what
up.
we estimated and everything like that. But
Okay.
yeah, I'm fine with 8%.
the other thing,
19, not so much.
that's a couple of years out, right?
well, the other thing that we don't know is, we know right now what our comp plan is, but we don't know in the future how much more we're going to be adding.
Yeah, that's
So
unknown too.
that's kind of an unknown, and I think that's still a few years out until we have more water to provide. We won't know that, but that might be another thing to consider too. Okay. Well, for now, but I hate to see 8% is a lot. 6% last year, and yeah. Okay. Yeah, let's see what quarter three brings, and yeah.
Okay, sounds good. That should be good direction there. So.
All right. So we can't do, just real quick, we can't do the tower until after the water treatment plant is up and running?
Correct.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Well, we can, but then you have a watering ban all summer. Just we won't be able to keep the other tower full when it needs to be. So
I will be gone that year.
Well, I was just wondering if, if you could do it in stages, because I know the painting has to be done in the summer, but could the restoration be
You
done?
have to drain the entire tower. So
Okay.
once it's drained, you do all the work and you have to paint the inside and out.
Okay, so it has to be done in the
There
summer.
can't be water in the tower when you're painting the outside.
Yeah. Okay.
can they paint it, or can they start draining it in April so they could paint it in June?
That's your busiest times.
For water.
Really, June?
June, you're talking a 3-month project. June, July, August, probably into September by the time you're done with the blasting. And first off, you have to move all the antennas off of it. That's a struggle in itself. Then you got to come in, tarp it all, blast everything inside and out, clean everything, and then it's prime and paint and
But can't they do all that in April and then prime and paint it in June? I guess is what I'm asking.
Are you going to guarantee me good weather? No snow, warm weather. That's the other thing you run into. That they are formulating cold weather paint, but it really, you need 75 plus weather to do it. So, as much as I loved it, it's needed it years ago, and it's getting worse now every day. So,
And there's no possibility of doing it earlier, like Kathleen is saying, but maybe not quite April, maybe May, June, July. But here's the thing: is there no possibility of, in the interim, getting water from St. Bonnie while we're doing this? I mean, I'm just
As we develop that agreement, we could talk about it. I think that would be a separate agreement from the emergency use
Right.
agreement. We could look at it. I don't know.
We'd have to look at E2S to see if they could, if they could really, if St. Bonnie could actually produce that much water for us.
that much water. Yeah, that's true.
It's quite a bit. I mean,
All right.
I mean, the beauty of it is we can run. I mean, unlike the north end where we can still run our plant and stuff. So, but when it goes in a backwash, you lose that pressure. So,
Right.
But we are up to. I mean, knock on wood, we're up to almost 30 hours of runtime on those filters, which is great, as compared to what we had at 10, 11.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well. All right.
We'll try. We'll try to maneuver something to get it done sooner. Maybe there'll be some new technology that allows us to do it quicker.
be nice.
All right. Yeah. All right, Sarah, you're up,
Okay.
or whoever wants to take it.
I don't think
Well,
any
you
of the
could
rest
do
of
it.
them want to do it.
Go ahead.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, I was asked to come here and give you a quick refresher on the open meeting law. That's what we're going to talk about today. If you have questions, feel free to stop me along the way. I'm going to go kind of fast through it because Jasper said I have less than 1 minute per slide. Okay. So the agenda today is to understand the open meeting law, review the basic requirements, discuss the exceptions, review common issues, and then know where to get answers. So the open meeting law is in Minnesota statute section 13D, and basically it prohibits actions taken by the city council at a secret meeting. So basically the default position is all meetings must be open to the public. There are some exceptions that we'll talk about. And so this assures that the public does have the right to get notice of the meeting and then to be informed. And it gives the public the opportunity to monitor the council when you are getting information about official city business, discussing information about city business, or making a decision. So it's all of those things. It's not just when you're making a decision. The basic requirements are that there has to be advance notice of the meeting. That's done by setting your regular meeting schedule that you do usually at the beginning of the year. And then also, if you have a special meeting, there needs to be a 3-day notice that is put out before you can have the meeting. As far as what's a meeting is a quorum. So a quorum here would be a majority of the city council. So 3 of you would be a quorum. So if there were only 2 of you here and everybody else was absent, we wouldn't be able to have the meeting. And then if there's a vacant seat, like actual unfilled seat, then that seat does not count towards the quorum. So if there's only 4 seats that are filled, the quorum is still 3 in that case.
3 in
But,
that case,
yeah,
right.
but if it's 3 and then if it's only 3, then it's 2. So like I said, there's a regular meeting, which is what you're going to do tonight. This is the meeting is kept by schedule. They're regularly scheduled meetings. I know you sometimes set alternative dates for meetings when there's lots of Monday holidays that come interfere. And then there's the special meetings. Those require a 3-day notice. What's important about those is that you can only discuss what is on when you post the notice, it can only be what is on the notice that you're going to discuss. So you can't bring up all kinds of other things. With a regular meeting, you can actually add things to the agenda the day of. So if something comes up and we need to add something to the agenda, you can do that when you set the agenda, when you approve it at the beginning of the regular meeting. So that's what's nice about regular meetings. Emergency meetings, I know everybody likes to make everything an emergency. These are really true emergencies. You probably had some probably during the pandemic. I've had them where I had a city that was hit by a tornado. Those are real emergencies, not just, oh, we forgot to do something and we need to do it. We had somebody that, they needed to get the bids approved and it was like, well, you messed up the dates and it's too late for that. So that's not an emergency. And that's, you just need to give good faith effort to provide notice. So you can call that the day of.
Sarah, you
yeah.
might want to touch on who can call an emergency meeting and or a special meeting.
Yes. So the mayor can call a special meeting or 2 council members.
2 council members,
Yes.
right.
So if there are two of you that want to call a special meeting, you can do that. Otherwise, the mayor can just call the special meeting. And I believe it's just the mayor that can call
The emergency meeting, yes.
Yeah, that's at least been my experience. The next thing we'll talk about, this is non-pandemic. During the pandemic, you had some special rules that applied that allowed you to have meetings kind of by interactive you could even do them by telephone. You didn't even have to have video. You didn't have to be able to see and hear each other. It was just a matter of, being able to listen in and the public being able to listen in. Well, those rules don't apply anymore because the pandemic is over. There's no state of emergency for that. So we do have to comply with the interactive technology statute, which is a different statute. They did change it this last year to make it a little looser, but it's still pretty difficult, I think, to make it work for most people.
That out. Yeah.
So council members have to be able to see and hear each other, and then the public has to be able to hear and see all the council members, not just the ones at the meeting, but the one who is participating remotely. There must be at least one council member at the meeting location. I've had that where everybody wanted to be remote, and it was like, no, somebody has to be here. You have to do the roll call votes, which is kind of a pain.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Remember, we used to have to do that.
The other thing, this is always the kicker, is that the council member that's participating remotely must be at a location that is open and available to the public. Mm-hmm. So if you're at the Marriott in Florida, then, we have to give the location of that Marriott, and then you have to be in the lobby or whatever. And, if somebody wants to come and watch the meeting there, then you have to let them do that. And a lot of people say it's just not worth. I don't really want everybody to know where I am on vacation. Mm-hmm. I'll just skip the meeting. So that's kind of usually what does the trick, is people don't want to bother with that notice requirement. I did actually have one just the other week that did do that. She was in the lobby, and we noticed her location, and she could participate that way. So that's kind of that. There's some other very limited exceptions where you don't have to post the location. One of them is military on active duty. Mm-hmm. And then the other one is basically after the removal of the state of emergency, then if your doctor has advised that you should not be in a public place for a personal or family medical situations, I think it's essentially COVID, then you can do that 3 times a year. Which I don't know, it doesn't seem very helpful. That was kind of the new thing they added. So continued means, we don't do this real often, but this basically would be if you didn't want to end the meeting and you wanted to continue it to the next day for whatever reason, or maybe a day after that. You can actually do that by establishing that at the meeting that you're at. You just don't adjourn the meeting. You just say it's going to be continued till Wednesday at 2:00, and we'll all be back here at City Hall at that time. And somebody would need to make a motion to that effect, and then that would be in the minutes, and then we don't have to do another notice. But that very rarely happens.
I don't think it's ever happened here. But
but it's an option. It's a tool. Right. Closed meetings. So like I said, every meeting has to be open to the public, but there are some exceptions. And so if you're thinking an exception might apply, it's best to talk to me or Jasper about what you're thinking in terms of that exception. The same notice requirements do apply to closed meetings. So we still have to kind of, we have to put out a notice. If it's a special meeting, we have to put out the 3-day notice. We have to say what we're talking about. So you would start by having an open meeting, and then there'd be a motion to close the meeting, and then you have to state basically on the record at the open meeting why you are closing the meeting. There should be a motion, and you should vote on that. And then when you go into the closed session, for the most part, those meetings are recorded, with the exception of the attorney-client privilege exception, which we'll talk about. You have to give advance notice if there's like an employee situation where their performance might be reviewed, or if there's a disciplinary issue, they must be given notice that you're going to be having this meeting about them. And then if it's a performance review, they can request that the meeting be open. And I have had that happen, which is very uncomfortable for everybody.
If it's a bad review. We have had open meeting reviews. And
I had a council member that was reading from a script, and she thought it was going to be closed. And then she just started barreling down the script and then realized that it was, and then she's like, well, I thought it was going to be a closed meeting. I'm like, no, he requested to be open. Well, if like, you didn't change your script. Not my problem. But, so reasons to close the meeting. There's like personnel things, so like misconduct under someone under the council's authority, so an employee. There's also employee performance reviews when you review the city administrator. You often close meetings for that unless he wants it to be open. That was my situation where the city administrator wanted it to be open. The purchase or sale of property, you don't have to close the meeting for that, but you can if you want to talk about an offer that you received for property or an offer you're making about somebody's property. Security data, that can be a tricky one. Now, you can't name everything as security data. It would have to be something pretty intensely, secure, like the whole, security plan for City Hall, and you're going to review it with the chief of police, and that kind of thing. It can't just be like,
Right.
Yeah. So that one's pretty narrow. Attorney-client privilege is also very limited. That's really when somebody threatens a lawsuit against the city, and it has to be a real threat. It can't just be somebody standing up there saying, I'm going to sue the city. It's, we probably got a letter from an attorney saying, we're going to bring a lawsuit, and here's our grounds for that. And, then I have to kind of make a determination that, yes, this is like a real threat. And then we can close the meeting for that. And then certain not public data, but not usually. So you do have the right under the Data Practices Act and the mean law to talk about not public data in an open meeting without any consequence. So you could talk about employee, reviews in an open meeting without any consequence. And you can talk about like a real estate appraisal in an open meeting without any consequence. So but that's something you can't just say, I'm going to close the meeting because we're talking about not public data. That's not an excuse, because usually you can talk about that. So what we usually do in those situations is we would pass out the not public data, and you could see it, but it wouldn't be available in the public packet. And then you'd kind of probably want to be mindful about not saying too much that identifies somebody or whatever you're talking about, that it's, the details aren't out there. But you most certainly can talk about not public data without any penalties. So.
That's kind of what we did when we were interviewing and hiring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the process to close, one thing that's important is to state the statute, and we usually write that on the agenda, what statute you're closing under. If it's for, real property, a sale of real property, 13D.05, subdivision 3, you have to identify the property. And then that should usually be done by the mayor, or a council member should make the motion. It shouldn't be done by me. There's an opinion on that where the city attorney read the reason to close, and they said that wasn't good enough, and it had to have been done by the council, which I don't think it shouldn't matter who says it, but whatever. And
So if you read the motion and then you said this is what the motion should include, and then Kathleen says, I move that, I so moved, whatever, that wouldn't be sufficient?
I guess not. You're supposed to repeat the... It's a really dumb opinion. So basically, describe it, and then, like I said, all closed meetings have to be recorded, except for the attorney-client privilege. Lots of times I'm in the closed session just to keep people on track, because it can be very exciting to be in a closed meeting, and you can start talking about other things, but you have to remember it is being, recorded, and that can come back to bite you. I think it did in Mound.
Did it? Yeah.
They were going off on other things. And somebody requested, it was like labor negotiations, and then they requested the recording. Because after all that's done, you can request the recording, and then,
Okay.
not in all circumstances, but in some, like labor negotiations in real estate, you can get the recordings. And that happened in Victoria, too. So what groups need to comply with the open meeting law? The city council, the planning commission, the park commission. If the council appoints any other bodies of the council, like if you have you appoint a group to look into transportation issues in the city, and you formally appoint those people, then that should be subject to the open meeting law. Don't have fire relief here, but I know some of you do go to those meetings. And then, like volunteer committees,
But
that might be.
in our case, I'm sorry. In our case, we're not a voting power at these meetings. So for the fire committee meetings, they're just
We don't have quorum.
we don't.
advisories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's really I don't even know if they're really public meetings. Quite honestly. So I mean, I don't think it's an open. Yeah, I don't think it's an open meeting law issue.
Yeah, but if it's something that the city's putting together, then
I mean, what I'm saying is, if we wanted to, let's say Kathleen wanted to talk to the representative in Mound and also the representative in Spring Park and Shorewood, they could actually talk because in not in their committee meeting.
Correct.
They could talk outside of that because
Yeah.
it's not a public commission.
Correct.
So, okay, okay. All right.
So pre and post meeting discussions. This is why I sometimes hang around after meetings.
Okay, Sarah's listening.
So yeah, I know sometimes when the meeting is particularly exciting, it's fun to sit up here and talk about it afterwards, but you should avoid doing that. Obviously, you can talk to each other about other things, but then again, you got the public standing out there and they're like, well, what are they talking about in there? So you might even look bad if you're talking about, hey, can I come over tomorrow and, do something, something personal instead of just city business. So, and then the same thing, avoid going anywhere and going out for drinks or coffee. I know I had a council that liked to do that. They like to go out for drinks, so don't do that. Serial meetings, so don't do this either. This is where you
I think
string things along. Yeah. So, the mayor calls Kathleen, and then she calls Ann, and then she calls Claudia, and then it becomes a serial meeting where you're not all talking at the same time, but you're
even if I call Kathleen and then Kathleen calls Ann,
yes.
and then Ann calls Claudia.
Yes.
That's a serial meeting.
Yes.
The other thing that is somewhat ambiguous, a little bit gray, is if somebody were to call Kathleen and then say, oh, I'm going to call Ann, and calls Ann and says, well, this is how Kathleen is going to be voting, and then calls Claudia and says, oh, well, this is how Ann and Kathleen are going to be voting.
Yeah.
You have to be careful about that as well. And so I've actually at times I've asked people, I've said, well, who have you all talked to? And then if they say, well, they've talked to other council members, I say, well, let me just explain right now. I said, I don't want to know what the other council members have said. I don't want to hear what your conversation was. If you want to tell me your story, that's fine, but that's the end of it. So be careful about that. It's a tricky one, because you don't want to tell people if they want to talk to our elected officials, I can't talk to you. But you have to be careful that they're not telling you that they've talked to so-and-so and how they're going to be voting.
Yeah.
So, Sarah, what is the time period? One day, what?
No, I mean, it's whatever. I mean,
right.
I mean, I think if it's construed, it's all the same subject, and somebody's
Same
able
subject.
to string that all together. That before the meeting, 20 days before the meeting, this person, because they can request phone records, and I've had that where they have strung together. They've seen, well, this person called this person, and they talked for 20 minutes, and that was right after the meeting. And then they called this person, and they talked for 5 minutes, and I mean, they put it all together through a data request.
No, I guess my question is, what makes it not a serial? If I wanted to speak with all the council members and the mayor about something, how do I go about doing it so it's not a serial meeting?
Well, you can speak to them individually about anything at any time. It's just you can't be, calling the mayor and saying, well, how are you going to vote on this?
Oh, it's just about, I see. Thank you.
Yeah.
If it's about something related to council, you just do it during the meeting.
Yeah. It's really about, how you're going to be voting on issues and
Discussing the other members.
yeah. It's just, but if you want to talk to whoever, whenever, you can. It's just important too to not be getting together with two other people and having a quorum of you talking, either by
Thank you.
email or on the phone or whatever. So that's the important thing, regardless, as long as, shouldn't be city business if that's happening. But if it's not city business.
I mean, there's been times where I've maybe talked to Ann. I said, no, Ann, I'm only talking to you, and I'm not going to talk to anybody else about it. That's, so you can do that. But, like one time I wanted to just inform Ann what I was doing so she would know what my thought process was. And I said, but I'm not talking to anybody else about this. I just want you to know what I'm doing. So, okay.
Thank you.
So that kind of comes up to the electronic communications. So this is when you can get in trouble with cell phones, computers, email. Basically, people can request this information, and then that's kind of how they can figure out if you're violating the open meeting law. And we've had that happen here. I don't know if there were any open meeting law violations. It was just more lots of data requests of emails. And so people got a hold of all these emails, and then they, could kind of string them together to see who was talking to who. And then if somebody I know not in this city, but in a different city, I had one of the council members refuse to provide their emails. And they're like, well, I just don't have any emails. And then we found that they had emails because we found them in other people's email boxes. So produce your emails if there is a data request, and we'll go through them. And it doesn't matter where they are. Like if they're, people will say, well, that I sent that one from my work computer. Well, it doesn't matter where you send it from. If it's about city business, same goes with the email address. If you're using your Gmail account as opposed to your city account, it's still a city business email. So
It is, except there's some exceptions. So, for instance, if Claudia talks to Jane Doe,
Yes.
resident, okay, that email can remain private.
Yes.
She does not have to disclose that. You can make it public if you wish, and that would be at your discretion. But if you send me an email, that's public. Okay, so there's a little bit of a difference. So if it's a
And if
resident,
she sends it to Jasper, then
then
not
it's public.
or any city staff.
Right.
So lots of times I know somebody will contact you and then you send it to staff because it's like, well, hey, can you deal with this person?
Right.
So at that point,
I kind of do that a lot.
it does become public at that point, which is probably fine. I mean,
Right.
I don't even know. I mean, I guess I'm not in your position, so I don't know when you would probably not want it to be public, but there might be.
There's times where you don't have to pass it on. I mean, whatever. So,
And then
yeah.
the one thing too you should keep in mind too is if somebody's complaining about their neighbor's property or something like that, their information, the fact that they are complaining who they are, that's confidential data. So that is always, no matter if you send it to Jasper or not, that can't be disclosed to anybody. So that's
Yeah.
under the Data Practices Act, and that's not just their name, but like anything that would identify them, their phone number or their email address, or even if they say I live on the corner of these two streets, and you can figure out who they are by doing that. So that's something to keep in mind too. That if somebody's complaining, because I know you get complaints about real property too, and it's fine to respond to them and all that, and to forward that to city staff because they know to keep it confidential. But it's just important to know that in case you're putting it out there somewhere else. I don't know where that would be, but. And so, this basically applies to any kind of communication. So text messages, emails, telephone calls, and people can request all that. So,
Right.
And it doesn't matter if it's your personal cell phone or a city computer. It's all fair game if it's city business. So it's about the content.
Except when it comes to personnel issues,
Yes,
then it's not necessarily public.
correct. Yeah,
So, okay, just,
yeah. Well, there's personnel, and then there's
Right.
real property complaint. There are exceptions.
Yeah.
But just I would just keep in mind that it's going to probably be public. So because I remember there were some embarrassing emails in the past that they were public, and it was like, oh, I don't think they thought they were public. So just keep that in mind when you're writing anything down. So that's the other thing. Do not reply all. So let's say staff, like Jasper sends you an email. It's good practice not to just all, reply all and say, well, I think this should happen, or, don't do that. Just reply separately back to Jasper or any other city staff that are emailing you. And then, like we talked about, one-way email communication does not violate the open meeting law, but the best practice is to use staff. So, you can get in touch with Jasper.
Yeah.
If you say, I think we should
Well,
have
the
a meeting.
problem with one-way communication to everybody is an issue, I think, because then one individual has sent out their opinion or whatever, and nobody else then can reply. See, that's the problem with that. So nobody else can state their opinion, and that's kind of a disadvantage for the other four council members.
You mean like when we get an email from a resident complaining?
No. If you sent out an email to all of us, and you just, say an issue, whatever, and we can't reply, and we shouldn't, but it's a disadvantage for all of us because now you've put your ideas on the table. You've told us what you want, but we have to wait until the meeting to discuss our issue or our part of it. So I know it's not illegal, but I really discourage people from doing that. If you want to say something, say it at the meeting.
I don't think I've ever done that.
No, I'm just saying it's come up before.
The other thing
It's come up
too,
before, so not here. Okay.
Like the using staff. One of the cities I represent, one time I got 5 phone calls from 5 council members, and they all asked me the same question. And I responded to all of them on the phone, and then I always tattletale on to the city administrator. So I wrote to the city administrator. I got a call from so and so. This is what they asked me. This is what I told them. So I did that 5 times. And then he wrote back to them all and he said, you should have just asked your question to me and I could have asked her. And then we wouldn't have been billed 5 times for this. We wouldn't have wasted everybody's time, asking this question that you all wanted to know the answer to. And so, it is good to use staff in situations like that where, everybody's asking the same question. And then, Jasper can kind of be the judge of, too, if, is this something everybody needs to know? Because in that case it was, like, can we close the meeting? I think was the question. Yeah. They all wanted to close it for a certain reason. So he was able, city administrator will say, yes, the attorney said we can close the meeting, here, here's what the requirements are. So social media, that's allowed if you want to use it, but it can violate the open meeting law if you're using it as a discussion tool. So if we've had this in another city, I just gave a speech about this last week about people commenting on social media, council members, getting on there. They're trying to be helpful, but then it kind of gets into a discussion, and then other council members want to chime in, and then it becomes an open meeting law violation if there's 3 of them talking amongst themselves on social media. So just be careful about that. And also, if we get a data request and they want all of your social media posts, then we got to produce those. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're posting on social media. It's it's not something you can't do, but just be careful of it, I guess, and mindful that it is subject to all the other. It's subject to everything that all the other communications are subject to.
I've also heard that some cities have what they call social media policies.
Yes.
And procedures in place so that everybody clearly understands their role and what you can do and what you shouldn't do and that kind of thing. I don't know if we have that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't do social media, so I don't pay attention. But, well, if we have that, that you should share that with the council then. I mean, just so we all are aware of it.
And I think a lot of the cities' social media policies also speak to, like, blocking. Like, we've had issues in one of the cities I represent where people, they say something, they make some announcement, and then these people start making these nasty comments, and then the city wants to block the comments, and then there's a First Amendment issue. And so we've been able to use the policy we can say, because it'll say like disrespectful comments or offensive language, those kinds of things are not allowed. So then we just say we're blocking it because of the, it's against the social media policy. Yeah. But it's nice to have that to hang our hat on, as opposed to saying, well, we just didn't like it, so we took it down.
We didn't like it.
So, yeah, that can happen with people. Or sometimes I just said, don't allow comments. Like, just put this up there, this information or this news, and you don't need to allow comments. Because that just kind of invites problems, I think, sometimes. So, exceptions. Of course, you can all get together at a party and hang out. Just don't be talking about city business. That's totally fine. Your social gatherings are fine. So, you don't have to freak out if you all find yourselves at a event together. I know sometimes if we have like an official city event, we might just post that just to be safe in the event you guys were caught talking.
But we still shouldn't be talking business because there's no agenda and there's no,
So,
So when we have our holiday event and you all come.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the tree lighting.
I know.
So, that might get posted and you might be like, well, why are you posting that then if it's, it's a social gathering? Well, that's why, just to be safe. So there is some personal liability in some situations. So the city does have insurance through the League of Minnesota Cities Insurance Trust, and it does cover open meeting law violations. And somebody who brings a lawsuit on an open meeting law violation can recover their costs, disbursement, and attorney's fees, commonly up to about $13,000. That's what's in the statute, but it has been more than that. That usually does come out of the league's pocket. There's also a $300 fine. So if like 3 of you were caught violating a mean law, that's $300 fine. That comes out of your pocket. The city can't pay that. The league can't pay that. If you do it 3 or more intentionally 3 or more times, which is, I don't know, it seems like that would be hard to do, then you do forfeit office. And there are some mandatory attorney fees, but it's pretty brazen usually when that is. This one was a lawsuit against the city. There was actually a data practices office opinion, and the city, even though they had that opinion, still failed to comply with that. So the data practices office does issue open meeting law opinions in addition to data practices opinions. So you can read opinions on open meeting law issues if you want through the data practices office. So those are my points, and I don't know if you guys have any questions, but it's kind of a quick refresher on open meeting law. But if you do have questions, feel free to reach out to Jasper or myself. Don't all 5 call me with the same question. But I definitely, if there's something, it's better to talk about it ahead of time than to try to close a meeting at the meeting when nothing's been noticed. Just make sure that we're following all the right procedures.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
I can share our social media policy. It's in our personnel policy.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
it's-
it just would be good.
Yeah, I'll send
Like
that
I
out.
said, I don't do social media, so I don't.
And you probably know you probably noticed this when I send emails to all of city council. I usually blind copy everybody, and then at the bottom of the email, I just say who I blind copied.
Yeah.
I think that then we avoid any reply all situations, and you just reply back to me if you have a question. So that seems to work
I think
all right.
Kathleen and I reply under personnel committee.
Yeah.
Reply all because it's not.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Yeah,
not
'cause we can do that.
yeah.
That way,
And it's
yeah.
the personnel committee and only 2 council members present. So, okay. All right.
Very good.
That's it. All right. Next.
All right, Mayor and City Council, we received a letter from the City of St. Bonifacius requesting our response regarding request to increase the service benefit for the St. Bonifacius Fire Department firefighters. To the service benefit to move from $5,200, which is what the current rate is, to $5,700. St. Bonifacius is favorably considering this, but they've requested our official action. I'll give a little input. This number is lower than what Mounds is.
What is Mounds?
I think is it 6,500 now? I want to say it's in 6,000s, which was a big increase this year. And basically what that means is, for every year of service that they have, they gain that in their pension, which they gain access to after they retire. And in this case, I believe they're partially vested at 5 years, and then they're fully vested at 20 years. Things to consider, if there's ever a district that's formed, we would have to reconcile these things if there would be one fire department. So that's something to consider. The fund itself, another consideration is, can the fund that the Fire Department Relief Association or Fire Relief Association have, can that fund this, and what percentage are they at? What I got back from St. Bonnie on this is that yes, they do. They're like 118% funded right now. This would get them to like 112, so they'd still be overfunded, that's a good spot to be.
Good,
yeah. St. Bonifacius is the fiscal agent for that fire relief fund. So a lot of times there's a question, what happens if that is underfunded? The Relief Association would then request money from St. Bonifacius, which then would work its way through the budget to us. We're 70% contributors right now. I think in 2024, we're about 70%. So want to get some feedback from the group on this request from St. Bonnie. So I'll entertain any questions.
Yeah, my first thought was, if we ever did want to create a district, we have to bring St. Bonnie up to Mount, regardless of one way or the other. Plus, I don't think it's a big ask to go from 55 to 50, to $5,700.
$500.
And I think I think it's something we should do.
Absolutely reasonable.
Yeah, because it's harder and harder to get recruits, and the lower this number is, the worse it is. So, yeah.
So I can either bring official action. I'm not sure what we've done in the past.
Previously, a lot of years we've just put it on consent.
Put it on consent.
agenda and then have the official response from the council be the passing their consent agenda.
This is something separate, a little bit, well, it's fire related, but any response yet to our original question about the 17,000 that?
The truck.
Yeah.
Yeah, $18,700.
$18,700.
Yeah. So after talking with Councilmember Refkin today, I've been working on this. I'm trying to get a hold of Watertown and Laketown Township folks, which is challenging.
Yeah.
I talked to Eric Anderson, the fire chief, today. St. Bonnie had a work session either this month or last month where they discussed what they're going to do with their public safety money. One of the things that they were discussing was possibly using some of that money and putting it into basically putting that $18,700 back into the capital fund, along with a couple other things. Eric mentioned that the furnace and things like that got used in not in the capital fund but in an operations fund, refunding that. So kind of, I think it was a total. He kind of said they were considering adding $40,000 from their public safety money into the fire fund. They haven't taken official action on that. I think that'd be probably part of their budget adoption.
Okay.
So there's potentially some movement there. I think we still want to look at working with Laketown and Watertown Township, kind of reconciling the agreement that we have. Right now there's 3 separate agreements. It'd be nice to have one agreement. Everybody signs it. I know I'm working with Sarah on that potentially. Still waiting on getting the agreements currently that Laketown has and Watertown has. So it's moving forward. I think that's positive. If it actually happens, it's even more positive. But I still think there's probably some just clarification things in the contract. We should still go through that exercise to complete. Talking with Councilmember Refkin, I think a third meeting would be good too. Right now, we only meet twice a year with them. Speaking with
You have more meetings.
It's okay.
speaking with the fire chief, he's definitely on board with that. He thinks that'd be a good idea. It'd be great to get one maybe right before September, so we get like the final proposed budget for the fire department, so we can put it into our budget, and maybe get some input or be able to give some input in that situation. I think we had our meeting, when was that? In May. We had a meeting in May, and from May to September, I think the budget maybe increased about 2% from what we were proposed,
okay.
which, Eric indicated that could happen.
Our portion went up higher because of the contract formula. So
it was like a 12% overall. It was a 2% budget increase, but our proportion went up to 12% increase. So from 9, I think the overall was 9. But ours is 12 because of just the way the contract is. So I think it's good things. It's positive in my opinion, but I think we'll still continue down the path of attempting to amend the agreement and try to clean a couple things up.
I found Mound's pension. It's $6,185.
Okay.
So they're getting closer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I think are they making an adjustment in 24? I can't remember. I thought they were. No?
We approved it last year for, no.
Okay. Either way, they're getting close.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
So what you'll see is an item on consent providing
We'll
support
put this, okay.
for this.
Yeah, at our next meeting.
At our next
October
meeting,
2nd. Okay. All right. That's it?
That's it.
All right. Then we can be adjourned for 20 minutes? Well, until the next. Okay, Kathleen made that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes 4-0. So we'll, 27 minutes.